Hi, I'm Annie Botticelli, and this is the Storyteller Forecast for Scorpio for June 2016. Go to my website, anniehelpsyou.com, where you can see what's new on my blog. I write about astrology and other topics, and while you're there, sign up for my free email newsletter and become part of my community and get perks. So what is going on in the month of June? We've got some major aspects with outer planets that can create long-lasting implications. We'll talk about that soon. We have Mars finally going direct later in the month. We'll talk about that. But first, let's talk about some things specific for Scorpio. Okay, so the early degree placements will have a very strong focus in the 8th house. So a reminder of who the early degree placements are. These are basically all the October born Scorpios and the first couple of days of November. The middle degree placements are around November 3rd through the 12th, and the late degree placements are like the 13th through the end of the sign. The reason why I say around instead of the exact date is because the sun moves into Scorpio on a different day in different years. It's not as easy as every year the sun moves into Scorpio on October 24th. So depending on what day it went in to your sign, the year you were born, that's when the breakdown of the 30 degrees of the sign will get broken down into thirds to make the early, middle, and late. The first 10 degrees being early, the middle being the second 10 degrees, and the late being the late 10 degrees. That's why I can't give you exacts. You have to figure that out. But it's close. It's around those dates I give you. Okay, now the next question. Why do I take the time to do this breakdown into early, middle, and late, even though it's confusing and I lose some people by doing it this way? The reason is because many people will have aha moments when they understand that their chart actually looks different all the time. If they're between an early and late degree placement, the early degree chart always looks very different than the late degree chart. And the middle ones are sometimes in the middle. They lean a little bit more towards the early sometimes, or a little bit more towards the late sometimes, or are broken up down the middle of the middle degree placements. And it makes a difference for your horoscope as far as what things are being highlighted in a certain time for you, especially when we talk about long-term transits, because those take place over a long time, and things that are supposed to be happening and early and some middle degree placements are experiencing, later degree placements won't be having that happen at all, and they'll be wondering why. So I want to provide that for you as a service, even though it's more difficult for me to do it that way. So thank you for bearing with me while I designate that out. So now, early degree placements, and this is coming soon for the rest of you, and actually some middle degree placements will experience it this month as well. So early and some middle have the sun, Venus, and the new moon in Gemini on June 4th at 14 degrees of Gemini will be in that 8th house. The rest of you will have the sun and the new moon and Venus in the 7th house. What is the same about this is that the 7th house and the 8th house are both partnership houses. So any way we look at it, there's major focus on partnership, relationship, collaborations, clients, anything having to do with one-on-one relationships or relationships of more consequence, like where you're involved financially with investors or borrowing money and things like that. So it's a major time for partnerships, a major time for relationships. So the early degree placements and some of the middle degree placements, this is focused more on the 8th house. This is coming soon for the rest of you. The 8th house is like relationship with resources. The 7th house is like you and the other person and you're in relationship, and that's the energy. The 8th house is like you and your stuff with the other person and their stuff, so it's like your money and you and your money and someone else and their money, or you and your assets, or you and your resources that are internal. It's a combination of other things besides just you. And often it involves legal things, and often it involves investments and money and things like that. So new energy there. It could be involving debt, credit, inheritances, marriage, combining with someone, collaborations, synergizing, sharing power. 8th house focus. The 7th house, it has, for the rest of the middle and the late degree placements, has the sun and Venus and the new moon. And even the early degree placements will still have energy in the 7th house because Mercury is there. So this story in general is showing us that Venus is bringing harmony to your relationships, and that's amazing. And the new moon is bringing new opportunities to your relationships or for your relationships. With the sun being there, it can bring warmth and vibrance and focus on your relationships, but similar to a very large spotlight. When you shine a spotlight on a field of experience or like a room, you can see some things that you didn't see before that are really nice. Or you can see the cracks in the walls, the cobwebs, the dust on the blinds, And so sometimes the sun will bring up things that need to be worked with or adjusted. So with this focus in the 7th and 8th houses, we really have to talk about the issue of accountability, because you're going to have an amazing opportunity to improve all your relationships. Part of how you might do that is through a deeper level of accountability. So if you have heard yourself say or heard yourself think or feel, my life would be great if only this person would just do this and this and that, or not do this and this and that. And so if you feel like your quality of life is being affected by something that someone else is doing or not doing, then whoop, 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 turn on your siren for the accountability police, because in a holographic reality, there's no such thing as someone doing something to us. We attract in reflectors based on our holographic imprint inside of us. So if you pay attention, you'll see that patterns that you have or feelings that you have, emotional patterns, betrayal, disappointment, frustration, whatever it may be, that actually preceded the current relationship that you have. That's been a story of your life. And the only person who can fix it by doing something different is you. You can't wait for someone else to do something different for your life to get better. That is the seed of disempowerment. The seed of empowerment is your happiness resides inside of you and is not determined by people, places, or things. And in the event where it's reflecting that your quality of life is being drastically and negatively affected by someone or something else, then that reflector is not going to go away, or a new one will come in its place until you resolve the issue inside. So, this is a wonderful, exciting time of blissful potentials and a chance to go even deeper. The full moon happens on June 20th. And for most of you, early and middle degree placements, you're going to have this fullness, completion, fruition, recognition, outcome of significance in your second house of finances. So it could mean a new stream of income. It could mean a chunk of money that comes in. It could mean something happens that sets you up to make more money in the future. You get something of value that you can use to make money, something like that. So most of you will have that completion, fruition happen in the second house. Some people experience the full moon as something dramatic and stressful. And there is a possibility there. Something involving money could come up for you that could be stressful. But that's not the only way it happens. And sometimes the coming to fruition or the emotional welling up is something that brings happy tears. So, excuse me, so the second house, it has something to do with your money, or your possessions. And fullness is coming. We don't know what that's going to look like, but it could be either. For the later degree placements, you're going to have that fullness come in your first house. The first house has to do with what you put out into the world, so your image. So it could bring recognition, fullness, completion, recognition could come in. Or it could be some sort of health, either mini crisis, like you get a flu or you get something. So I'm telling you this beforehand so that you beef up your immune system and don't run yourself down before the time of the full moon, so that you protect your body, if it's possible, if that's how it was going to come for you, from getting sick. Elderberry, vitamin C, just straight vitamin C, probiotics. Probiotics are good bacteria. And there's plenty of bad bacteria within us and coming at us from every direction. So the probiotics are like the superheroes, and bad bacteria are like the villains. So one way to stay really healthy, if it's appropriate for you in your circumstance to take probiotics, some situations it's not indicated, but most people will benefit from taking probiotics to keep the superhero ratio higher than the villain ratio, because that's what we need for good to win, right? So that might be relevant for you there in the first house. There's also some other general health implications that we'll talk about with these heavy hitter lineups. So these things that I just talked about are all specific for Scorpio, but we've got 3 transits that are really important that have general implications that I'm going to talk about now. I call the theme of the month of June the heavy hitters converge, because outer planets, when they're locked together in a meaningful geometric combination, are like the heavy hitters. Whenever we have an aspect of an outer planet, meaning the ones that take longer to go around, like Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, Uranus, Pluto, or if you're looking at asteroids, Chiron, etc., these planets take a long time to get around. So when they make an aspect, especially to another outer planet that takes a long time to move around their orbits, their influences last for a longer period of time than the ones with the personal planets, unless of course there's a personal planet being retrograde, that's different. But as far as an actual aspect occurring within personal planets, you might feel those effects for a couple of days. But the story of outer planets getting together, that tells a story over a long period of time. It makes me think of when I was growing up in New York City. When I was a little kid, I was a baseball fanatic. I was quite a tomboy, and me and my little friends would obsess over baseball, and we'd watch it with my dad, and we would just get so excited when the guys who would be the ones that would hit the ball out of the park regularly would come up to bat. They called them the heavy hitters. And you didn't know if this was going to be a time they were going to hit a home run, but the odds were more likely that they were going to hit a home run than anybody else. Everyone was just, waiting with excited anticipation, especially if there are men on base, And that's the energy of June as it relates to the heavy hitters in the cosmos, because we have 2 convergences of heavy hitters. The first one is between Saturn in Sagittarius and Neptune in Pisces. Now, this aspect is a square. A square is known to be a challenging aspect. I don't want you to fear squares, however, because sometimes it's a square that we need, or a point of conflict that we need to crack open something up to another level, It's like it's a point of conflict that from it, you can completely improve your life and your life experience. All transits, especially the challenging ones, show weak spots. So this transit will be no exception. Saturn in Sagittarius and Neptune in Pisces in a square, this happened in the beginning part of this cycle. It was the last days of November 2015 through like December 4th of 2015. So the end of November, beginning of December of 2015 is when this happened first. It happens now for the second time, June 5th through June 18th, with the strongest point being on June 18th, but very strong for that whole time. And you'll feel it before those dates and after. It's a long-term story. And it's a theme that's following from the end of last year into this year, and it reaches its culmination like the end of August 30th through around September 21st of 2016. So over the course of the year, from the end of 2015 through almost the end of 2016, there's been this point of conflict. And so themes that came up at that point very likely will either come up again if they hadn't been resolved, or related themes will come up, or maybe different manifestations. But many, many people are going to have this issue come up in the form of security. And many people will have it in the form of internet security. When Neptune, the energy of Neptune and Pisces is very much behind the scenes. It's private stuff. So things that you want to be private, with Saturn coming and making this square to Neptune, they might not be private anymore. So I always post these horoscopes at least a month and sometimes more early, so that you can have a heads up for what's coming, so that you can take action. So one of the places that I recommend that you take action here is around this square, and it's around security. So I think it's a wonderful idea for you to change your passwords, to add whatever steps you can to beef up the security, to have a professional do a security check even, or research ways that, if you don't have the money to do that, research ways to beef up your internet security. Be careful of the things you post on Facebook and social media. Just have a new level of awareness of apps and how people are gathering information about you and your what you're doing on the internet, things like that. This could also be home security or work security or anything having to do with things that you want to be private that might not be completely secured. So you want to try to go through between the time you listen to this and then and strengthen as many of these weak links as possible. That's a really good use of the energy. There are also likely to be a lot of conflicts or things that come up regarding fear and faith. And so here are some questions to ask that can lead you down a good path with using this energy the best way. One is where, and this is kind of along the lines of what I was talking about with security, but where are you putting your trust? And is that well placed? And that can be having nothing to do with internet security. It could be in relationships. It could be with who knows, whatever. Ask the question, where are you placing your trust? And maybe it's not the best place to place it. Where could you place more trust and you're not? There's also a very major spiritual component to this because trusting in the benevolent source and clearing up any issues you have with your connection to the divine could be what's coming up here for many people. So maybe you're placing your trust in things that are changeable and movable in the third dimensional reality, and we all know that those things are change and or always changing, but the connection with the divine is something that isn't changing. So spiritual revolution could occur from this transit for many. Where are your boundaries? Are they secure? Should they be more secure in certain places? And should they be less secure in certain places? Sometimes we're putting up walls in places where we really want something to come in, So this square can bring up all of those things. If you want more love to come into your life, if you want more money to come into your life, figuring out where you're putting up blocks to receiving those things is going to be relevant for many people. Of course, I always love suggesting inner work because sometimes this boundary setting thing is not in our conscious control. It's very much in our unconscious program. And the only way that you can really get at those unconscious programs is by working on the unconscious level. One of the books that I talk about all the time that works very well for helping you to set healthy boundaries in places where you need them and take some extra walls away in places where you're trying to bring more in is a book called The Presence Process by Michael Brown. It's masterful for that. So you can look to see where your boundaries need to be bolstered and where you need to be a little bit more lax in certain places, things like that. It's like the showdown between reality and illusion, and form and formlessness. So all the many ways that those conflicts can come up, this story has been brought up at the end of last year for special focus, and the story is getting stronger now, and it will reach its culmination at the end of August into September. So the next major convergence of heavy hitters we have, and this one I'm all smiles about, even though I'm going to make lemonade out of the challenging one and tell you how you can make the most of it, when there's a really great aspect like a trine, like this second convergence, which is between Jupiter in Virgo and Pluto in Capricorn, I'm going to be really excited about that. So Jupiter in Virgo is very much about everything Virgo, expanding everything Virgo. And Virgo has to do with your health, your diet, your regimen, yoga, meditation, medical diagnostics. Many people have had major enigmatic health stories, and they're trying to, like a super detective, get to the bottom of what is happening with their health. And Pluto is the best ally in this because Pluto goes deep into research. Pluto rules research. And Pluto in Capricorn is very practical. So having this trine, which is strongest between June 23rd and June 30th, and again, there's a story with this. It started in mid-October 2015. It happened the second time mid-March 2016. And now it reaches its culmination with this aspect at the end of June. So many people who have been on a wild health journey, you might have some massively good news, or at least massively enlightening news that can then put you in the direction for better health. many people are going to see movement forward in the arena of health or diet or anything like that. If you are a person who has MS, autoimmune, any other kind of autoimmune things, inflammatory based problems, colitis, anything involving inflammation, problems with your skin, anything that just seems like whatever you're doing to it, you're not hitting it at all. There's a couple of resources I'm going to recommend for your journey. One is a book called Medical Medium. Medical Medium is a Hay House book, and I'll put it in the link below this video. And it is very interesting. It's very different, and maybe some of you won't resonate with it, but many more people are going to have a lot of answers come here. But he's basically talking about how many of the things that are plagues for our time, from the health perspective, are actually based in virus. And I know that research that I've seen about cancer, they're finding more and more cancers are linked to viruses. So this isn't really very surprising, or metaphysical for that matter, even though the person who brings it is a medium, between worlds. The information is very much based in science from what I've been researching myself. So there could be a viral component to the things that you think are not virally based, and by treating it, you could all of a sudden heal from something that you're not supposed to heal from. Now, of course, I'm not a doctor. I'm not giving medical advice. I'm offering a resource that could change your life. So check out Medical Medium, Hay House. And another idea is to get some genetic testing. If you've had a lot of problems, you could narrow down your specific issues by having some genetic testing. A basic genetic test that will give you a lot of information and is not as expensive as some of the other ones is called 23andMe. It's the number 23andMe. And this will let you know if you have certain parts of your liver function that don't work, which would create all these other problems. If you have certain liver pathway problems, etc., or other things that could be relevant to your health. There's someone else that I'm going to recommend, his name, and I'll put all of these links underneath this video, and is a man, his name is Gino, and he is a friend of mine who is very gifted with understanding how science and physiology work, and he has helped many people heal from things that were considered terminal. So if you look up genospassion.com or I think it's .com, or I'll put the link below here, maybe Gino can assist you with your particular situation. And he likes to work along with your doctor to see your blood tests and things like that. So many people are going to have good news or breakthroughs along those fronts, and maybe some of these resources will be part of that. What's very exciting about this transit is that it's reaching its culmination at this point, The previous transit we talked about, we're kind of still in the middle of that story, but this one is reaching this conclusion, and it's such a wonderful aspect. So other things that could come up here are things involving pets or animals, since Virgo rules those areas. Also involving your quality of work experience or daily experience. Virgo rules what you do every day, what your experience is like every day. So when you have Jupiter in Virgo, it's working on trying to make improvements in your day-to-day schedule. So if you look at your life and you say, oh God, I need to work less, Jupiter in Virgo can help you with that. If you're like, oh gosh, I don't have a job, I need to work more, Jupiter can help you with that. Whatever your subjective experience of improvement of your daily schedule is, Jupiter is working really hard to help you with that. And as of the time it went direct in May, those things started lighting up again. And now when it reaches this culmination of this activation with Pluto in Capricorn at the end of June, you could see some major improvements in your work-life balance, whatever you've got going on in your daily schedule. So that's really exciting. Also, many people will experience this trine with Jupiter and Pluto as bringing them advancements on the fronts of work, career, and life purpose. Because Pluto being in Capricorn, Capricorn rules work, career, and life purpose. So Jupiter being in a great angle there can help to accentuate, unblock, free, synergize, bring great juju to your work and career and life purpose areas of life. So that's another way that you might see this trine story reach a culmination at the end of June. Third piece that is very relevant is that on June 29th, Mars is going direct. If you've been listening to my reports for a while, I've been talking about Mars in its pre-shadow retrograde, in its retrograde, and now on June 29th, Mars finally goes direct. It has a pretty long shadow period on the back end. It will be in the post-shadow period until August 21st. But with every day that marches on past June 29th, you're getting more and more clear of it. So if you've got to launch something, do something new, if you've been waiting, July is your month to do that, and the first little bit of August, because then we're going to get into Mercury shadow again, and it's not going to be the time to launch things. There will be some even better stars for launching in the last 3 weeks of October and all of November and the first couple of days of December. That period of time at the end of the year is actually the most open than any we've had this entire year of 2016, because the other period we had, like February, March, and then this one in July into the beginning of August, those all have some influence of shadow, of retrogrades, of personal planets, even though there's some workable ground. So if you're not quite ready to launch, or something, you really want to have all the personal planets clear, maybe you'll want to lean towards that second window, but you'll just have to feel it out, because I don't know what your personal chart looks like, and sometimes personal chart aspects can supersede what the general stars are, So if you want some help with that, anything as far as perfect astrological timing or navigating through making the most of the transits, you can go to my website, anniehelpsyou.com. You can check out my growing list of blogs there to assist you. You can check out my personal coaching. You can look for my Unleash Your Money Magnet program to help you unleash your money magnet. If you go to anniehelpsyou.com and then click on programs, you'll see Unleash Your Money Magnet. You'll see my Creating Successful Online Business course that will be enrolling in July. You'll see my Astrology Apprenticeship program, which will be enrolling in July. And you'll see my Shine program, which is a 28-day virtual coaching program, which helps you to make the most of the starry potentials by clearing out your inner blocks. And while you're there, definitely sign up for my free email newsletter and become part of my community and get all kinds of cool opportunities and information that come along with being in that group. So I hope you have a wonderful month, and I'll see you next month. Bye.